Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our second session. We've got a huge amount of expertise in the NHS that we are putting before you this morning. And our next speaker has, in fact, got 30 years experience in the NHS, starting as a management trainee. He's held leadership positions in acute and mental health services and at 4 regional health authorities. He was just telling me that Andrew Lansley is his 4th Secretary of State. He is, of course, the Chief Executive of the NHS. Sir David Nicholson is going to talk about the new NHS commissioning system as the driver of innovation. This is where we get down to nuts and bolts. Please welcome Sir David Nicholson.
Okay, well, good morning, everybody. It's always great to have the Secretary of State be my warm-up act. And I think he set out very well the whole of the government's policy in relation to this. I think it's a great event that we're all at, and it's so nice to see so many of you're here. This is really important, I think, for the NHS and for healthcare and for our partners across the independent and private sectors to get together to think about how we can take services forward. I have to say that the last time we had one of these was 2 years ago, and the highlight for me was meeting Liz Dawn, Vera Duckworth, for many of you, who was here with the British Lung Foundation. It wasn't the technology, it wasn't that it was doing that. I had my photograph taken with her, actually, and it was probably the first time that my mother has realised that I've got a quite important job. I explained to her what I did before, but it didn't really work out. But when she saw me with Vera Duckworth, she realised I'd made it. So sadly, she's not here this year, but no doubt there's someone else may have photograph taken. But it's great to see you all. I want to talk about the NHS. Obviously, I want to talk about the kind of direction that it's going in. I want to talk a little bit about the past and some of the lessons that we've learnt. I want to talk about outcomes in particular, the importance of those for the new system. I want to then talk about the commissioning system, what it might look like in the future. I want to go on to talk a bit about the implications of that for hospitals and healthcare providers. And then I want to talk about the importance of this system in relation to innovation and change and how we're going to knit all of that together. So, first thing I'd say is that many of you I know have been involved and worked within the NHS for many years and have seen the significant and massive changes that we've made over the last few years in particular. It is remarkable, I think, the transformation that's happened in healthcare in this country over the last few years, and everybody, I guess, in this room has played their part in it. It's been a really tremendous effort, but you can never stand still. You can never, as an organisation or as a healthcare system, ever look back all of the time. But I think there are some important lessons for us in the past, and one of them, I think, was 7 or 8 years ago when the NHS was in financial difficulty, when the financial challenges were becoming significant for us. We went through a whole series of really difficult challenges for the service in a way that, in my view, during that period, the senior leadership, including myself, sort of lost the plot. We kind of lost why we were there. We got so involved in the reduction in the financial deficit that we needed to work on, so involved in the development of the new reforms at that time, foundation trusts and payment by results, practice-based commissioning, all of those technical changes, that we sort of lost the plot. And one of the things that we did, we lost our staff. The people who worked in the system started to say, what is the connection between the leadership of the NHS and the jobs that we do? An important lesson, I think, for us to learn as we take forward the next set of changes. And what we did, our response to all of that, was the development of high-quality care for all. The work that Lord Darcy did, indeed, the first expo came out of that work around high-quality care for all, where we made, I think, some really important progress in the NHS as a whole, where we engaged people, all of you, I guess, in this room, across the NHS, in working out how could we improve the quality of service for our patients. We went even further in the sense that we defined what quality was for the first time. Now, I guess at one level that might seem pretty obvious. Everyone's in favour of quality, but everyone meant something slightly different when they talked about quality. And what we said was quality was patient satisfaction, how satisfied our patients are with the services that they are provided, what is the experience that they have, is it a good, a bad or an indifferent one, whether the services were safe, whether untoward incidents, never events, infections, all those sorts of things were affecting our patients, and thirdly, whether the service was effective. So effectiveness, safety and experience are all parts of the quality of service that we want to deliver for the NHS. It's not one of them, it's not two of them. We don't trade one against the other, we do all three. Extremely important, I think, for us as we take things forward. And indeed, in the bill before Parliament at the moment, that definition of quality, setting out how that has to be at the heart of the NHS in the future, is going to be enshrined in legislation. A symbolic act, I think, in lots of ways, but an important one as we take the service forward. And we worked at that time on pathways of care. We talked about how we could engage more clinicians in the service. We talked to patients. We explored the issue of outcomes, all of those things critical for us as we took the service forward in the last few years. But what happened, of course, in fact, it was just nearly 2 years ago now, it became clear to all of us in the NHS, particularly at the most senior level, that the financial circumstances, that the environment that we've been working in over the last 10 years, one of significant growth year on year. Over that period, we'd increased the size of the NHS by a third, huge numbers of extra staff, extra investment in the service. That was all coming to an end. And it was obvious to us, I guess, 2 years ago. You could see the global financial position. You could see what was happening across the world. You could see that the public finances simply would not be able to support the kind of levels of growth in the future that we'd had in the past. So we needed to think as an NHS, so how are we going to respond to that? What are we going to do? How are we going to look forward to plan services, organise them for our patients in a way that could deal with that particular environment? Hence the work we did around quality, innovation, productivity and prevention. And the really important thing about all of that is that all four of those things fit together. You should never talk about quality without talking about productivity and prevention. You should never talk about any of them without talking about innovation. An important, not a programme, but a challenge for us. How could we take the service forward? Could we create essentially £20 billion worth of headroom over the next 4 years to make sure that we could deal with the big changes, the really important changes that are affecting the NHS as we go forward. Politicians always are important in terms of healthcare and the kind of setup we have, the kind of systems that we have, but the things that are really driving change in our service are medical technology, are the expectations of our patients, are demographics. They're the things that are really there, irrespective of the political superstructure that we have. So how could we deal with those changes and create the financial headroom to make that happen? And we started on that path. We started the engagement, the work, and as we sit here today, essentially the rubber is really hitting the road now in terms of those financial service and quality plans to take the service forward over the next period. A really tough time for the service as a whole. And if you think about the totality of that need to develop the £20 billion worth of headrooms, about 40% of that is going to come from things that the Department of Health has direct control over, but also the reduction in management costs. We're going to move from a system which costs us £5.1 billion to run to one that costs little over £3 billion to run. So 40% of the savings that we need are going to come out of that. That's very tough, very difficult. Affects real people. We'll have to lose people who have been fantastic in our service, who want to continue, but simply we do not have the resources to take that forward.